It's a very challenging time, interesting time. As I said in my State of the State speech, I'm very excited and optimistic about our future. From big challenges come big opportunities, and I think we can do important things to change our system and get a better future for the people of Illinois. And I'm very heartened by what I'm seeing in the General Assembly. For the first time, I think ever, there's acknowledgement in all four caucuses that structural changes are needed to improve our system and get a better future. That's exactly right, and everybody is now talking about that, and many folks are working on structural changes. I applaud the leaders in the Senate for trying to come together on a bipartisan basis to make important structural change, and I think they're trying to address many of the areas that need to be addressed. I think term limits is an important topic that they're trying to take on. I think property tax relief, true property tax relief, there's something they're trying to take on, which is exactly right. It's our #1 most uncompetitive and punishing tax in the state. They're trying to take on education funding reform and taking the work from the bipartisan commission, which is exciting and good. We need the best schools in America in every neighborhood. They're taking on regulatory reform to help us become more competitive and attractive to businesses, which is critically important. It's our #1 priority has got to be economic growth and growing more jobs. We've got a lot of challenges. The challenges become manageable, and we can overcome them if we have strong economic growth. If we have weak economic growth or no job creation or job losses, like we've had for too many years, we'll never get our way out of the problems we've got. So I applaud the Senate for taking on the challenges and trying to come up with legislation on a bipartisan basis. I think that's terrific. I'm cheering them on, and we'll help if they ask, and if they don't, that's great. And we hope they come to some good conclusions. And over in the House, I applaud the Democratic leaders for publicly saying for the first time that we should have tax reform to make ourselves more competitive and attractive for job creators. That's exactly right. And I applaud them for that, and I look forward to working with them to try to get that done. And I especially am heartened and applaud the House on a bipartisan basis for actually passing true property tax freeze, permanent. That's a big deal. Now, I'd like to get that to my desk. It's not on my desk yet, but that is a very big step, and it's exactly the template. I hope that both chambers can pass that and get that exact bill on my desk. It basically gives power back to the people of Illinois on property taxes, and taxes can't go up at the local level unless the residents who pay that tax say it's okay through a referendum. That's a big deal. It's exactly the right thing to do. Something that we've advocated for years. And getting more power back to the people as much as possible, I think, is the right answer for our long-term prosperity. So I'm heartened by these trends, but obviously big challenges. They all are very, very directly tied to the budget. I look forward to giving my budget address here on the 15th. The simple mathematical fact, reality is, we can't have balanced budgets unless our economic growth is as fast or faster than our government spending growth. It's just mathematically true. And if our economy grows slowly and government spending grows fast, as it has been for decades and decades, that just creates a cycle of deficit spending, borrowing, and taxing. Deficit spending, borrowing, and taxing. It's unsustainable. That's the track we've been on. That's the reason it's so important to have structural changes to the system, changes that will help us grow our economy faster with more jobs, which in the end drives a higher quality of living and higher family incomes, which is the real goal for all of us, at least for me in my work. But it also, that economic growth helps get balanced budgets, helps keep our budgets balanced. And 2 years ago, I laid out the trajectory. If we'd had an economy in Illinois that grew at the rate of the rest of the country, nothing else was different. We just grew at the national average. We were having balanced budgets now. We've got to get the economic growth up, and we've got to do what we can to bring down the increases in government spending, the drivers of that, and whether it's the unfunded mandates, whether it's the excessive number of units of government and taxing bodies we've got. You know, you guys know we have almost 7,000 units of government, and it's a bureaucracy that's expensive and kind of feeds on itself and causes more spending. So we've got to take on these challenges, and again, I applaud the General Assembly for doing that. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
There are a lot of pieces out there in the Senate grand bargain. Can you walk us through, you've seen the bills. What pieces of it are you on board with?
Yeah, so it's a fair question. Unfortunately, I don't think it's right for me to weigh in yet. I think it's still evolving. I think there's a lot of negotiating and compromising going on, and I don't want to, push or interfere. I think it's a good discussion. My sense is there's really a good faith, hard work going on, and I don't want to get in the way of it. So I'm not going to comment yet on things that really aren't done. And
well, it looks almost certain that it's going to be at least a 4.95% income tax. The party that, the GOP and you have attacked Mike Madigan for talking about 5%. Can you even say a 4.95 would be okay with you? Because if you don't say it, how do you expect Republicans in the Senate to vote for this? Because then if you don't support this later, you're knocking their legs out from under them.
Well, again, I think it's premature for me to comment on any specific elements of the negotiations. I'm cheering them on, and I'm glad they're doing it. They're doing the right thing. And
do you want them to vote on the package as is?
Again, I think it's...
You won't even say that?
I don't think it's helpful for me to comment on the specifics of...
But a lot of people assume that the Chamber of Commerce, when they came out against the entire package, was more or less acting as your proxy in staking out a position against it. Is that a mistaken thing that people are reading into that?
I think there's a lot of assumptions. There have been for a couple of years. I think there's assumptions now. I'm not going to comment on. No one... I don't think there's too many folks have wondering what I've recommended. I mean, I've been very clear about my recommendations from day one, actually for 4 years. And we laid out a 44-point plan to get us structurally changed, and I've whittled it down to a handful. And I've said, too, if folks don't like my recommendations for fixing the system, I'll listen to others. But let's not just keep doing what we've been doing, because we haven't had balanced budgets that I can find in 30 years. And we're one of the lowest growing economic states in the country. And we got the highest property taxes in America. And we have the worst funded schools from the state in America. We cannot tolerate this anymore.
So then what are your thoughts on the report from the school funding task force?
Again, I'm actually digesting that myself. There's a lot of material in there. But I think my sense is it's good. I mean, it's hard. We've got to put more money in from the state, which is exactly right. And my sense, I'm still talking to experts myself about this evidence-based structure. It seems to make sense to me, and it sounds like other thoughtful education leaders around the country believe that it's the best way to do state funding for schools. So I applaud them. I know they had it was challenging to come up with that plan, but I think it's a good step in the right direction. I've heard some people criticize them and say, well, you should have drafted a bill. Well, it's not really commission's job to draft a bill. What they did was lay out the parameters for a bill to get drafted. I think that's exactly right. I think they did their jobs, and I applaud the Democrats and Republicans on that commission. I think they did good work. One of the reasons I ran for governor was to really try to change and improve dramatically our public education system in Illinois. So it's the best in America, best in the world. It's going to take more resources to do that, and more equity across school districts to do that.
So are you planning to draft a bill based on this framework that your commission put up?
I think I'll talk to the General Assembly about who should draft. My sense is I think the senators are, I don't know, I think they're working on something, which is good. If they would like our administration to draft something, we could do that. As far as I know, nobody's asked us to do that yet. I'd have to check with the team.
Well, one of the conclusions of that report was poorer districts or where high poverty is will need some more money. I just heard President Cullerton talking in Chicago about, part of this idea or his bills would actually save like 2,000 jobs from layoffs in Chicago. I heard you go to tell school children in New Berlin your parents shouldn't be paying to bail out Chicago. So more money is probably going to be needed for Chicago in a bill. Are you going to use the bailout statement that you have been so happy to go around the state to say? Or can Chicago get more money without that kind of politics getting involved?
So this isn't a very important issue. All low-income school districts need more money, not just one, not just the biggest one. all school districts, and all school districts should be treated equitably, and I've said this for years. In terms of the bailout language, let's be clear about that. There are those in Chicago who have said repeatedly, Chicago is being treated unfairly. Chicago needs more money and deserves more money because Chicago is the only school district in the state that pays its own teacher pension contribution. Okay? That is a fact. Chicago is the only school district that pays its own teacher contribution. That's a fact. That's true. That has been true for more than 100 years. This is not a new thing. I did not create this. Here's the point. And so they've said, treat us fairly. State, you pick up our teacher pension. That's what they say. It's all the time. Okay, this is where the bailout issue comes in. Chicago, for decades, has also been receiving annually a block grant of $250 million that no other school district gets and is not eligible for. And that was a quid pro quo. That was a deal that predates me by a long time. They got that block grant because they're the only school district that pays its teacher pension. In fact, that block grant is larger, a little bit, not much, but a little bit larger than the normal cost of the teacher's pension contribution for Chicago. So then when and it's convenient for some folks to not talk about the block grant. And you'll see, if you study the transcripts in the education funding formula task force, you'll see acknowledgement with Democrats and Republicans that there is an extra block grant. It's above and beyond. No other school district gets it. And so when folks conveniently don't talk about the block grant, but then they say, pick up our teacher pension to treat us right, that's a bailout. Basically, we're treating other taxpayers around the state differently. They leave their block grant, but the state picks up their teacher pension. That's not fair.
Do you think the state should be picking up the teacher pension portion at all? It's the Illinois Policy Institute, I believe their budget says that's a practice they believe should stop. Would you agree with that?
Well, again, I'm not going to comment on, there's a lot of ideas floating around. And the leaders in the General Assembly have, my understanding is, for years talked about, what's it called, where some pension obligations get shifted back, cost shift? Is that the phrase that they use? Cost shift, back to the local level. There are many people who have argued that it's more logical for the folks who determine who should be eligible for pensions and when and for how much and on what terms should also be responsible for paying it. Because if one group gets to decide kind of the parameters and decide to be very generous, but then somebody else pays, there's a disconnect. So that's just factually true. There's a disconnect. I won't get in today. I think it's premature for me to weigh in on the policy implications. There's some folks who want to change it now. Many Democrats in the General Assembly have wanted to change it for years. Some Republicans have. There's obviously resistance, because then that means somebody who wasn't paying something before pays now. So there's going to be a lot of pushback on that. But I will say there's a disconnect, and it's actually a problem. The disconnect is a problem.
Given the position that we're in as a state, do you think it's possible to get out of that situation through expense cuts alone?
Out of the situation of?
The situation we're in, owing $130 billion.
Well, I've always said, and it's not just, lingo. I mean, I don't believe, given the debt we have, given the unfunded pensions we have, cutting our way out of our problems alone is not going to be sufficient. I've said that. I've always said we're not going to cut our way out of our problems. We're certainly not going to tax our way out of our problems. Some people just say, let's do a big income tax hike or graduated income tax. That's not going to solve our problems. And you can look at New Jersey or Connecticut or California, who can't pay their pensions and can't balance their budget, and they've already got this huge income tax rate and high property taxes. We can't tax our way out. We can't cut our way out. We can and must grow our way out of our problems. We've got to make Illinois competitive, attractive for job creators, and grow. If we will get out of our problems. We'll grow our way out of our problems if we make those changes.
Is there a target number you'd like to see for economic growth across the state?
Well, it's a great question. So the answer is it better be higher than whatever we're going to peg for our government spending growth. That's so if we're,
So is that 1.5%?
Well,
Over time, what's that?
So you can look at the long-term economic growth of America, you know, it's several, 2.5, 3, I'd have to, you know, go.
Right.
It's a good, so I've always believed, and I believe very strongly in my heart, Illinois should be one of the faster-growing states in America. We have the best people in America. We have the best location of any state in America. We have most of the great transportation infrastructure, and we're the crossroads of America. We have outstanding agriculture in America. We're the business hub of the Midwest and Chicago. I mean, we should be kicking tails. We should be one of the top 5, maybe 10, but certainly top 10 easily, fastest-growing states. Instead, we're almost always bottom 5, certainly bottom 10. It's the good news and bad news of our problems. Our problems are self-inflicted. I mean, we have policies, taxes, regulations, structure that create our problems to make us uncompetitive and unattractive for job creators. And the good news is, bad news is we created it. The good news is we have the power to fix it. And so that's everything that our administration is working towards, to try to fix that and get a balance where our economy is growing faster than our government spending.
If I'm not mistaken, Jim Schultz said recently up in Chicago that the instability from the budget impasse is a big impediment to getting businesses
Sure.
to Illinois.
Sure.
How much of a factor is the instability and the impasse at this point?
Well, it's definitely an important factor. But it's not just, it's easy to say, well, it's instability this year. Businesses look at the fiscal discipline of a state. Businesses look and say, Illinois has never had a balanced budget. That's,
Right,
We were
but
never
they're saying
11.
right now we don't have a budget at all.
the problems of the state are not of the last 18 months. They're of the last 30-plus years. This is something we've got to come to grips with. I mean, it's a cultural shift that's necessary, that we actually have financial discipline. We don't make promises that we're not going to keep or not fund. We don't borrow. We don't have, the only state I know that we don't pay our bills, and the not paying the bills predated me.
Except it was down to about 30 days, and now it's down to about 2 years.
Okay,
I mean, it's gotten worse in the 2 years that you've been demanding change from a Democratic legislature that isn't going along with your program, so when does it become your fault?
We have got to change the system so our economy grows faster than our government spending. That's the whole key.
Okay, in the budget address coming up, last year you basically said, give me numbers or let me just take whatever money comes in and cut. And you didn't say how much you wanted in taxes. Are you going to be more specific this year? As I believe Susana Mendoza has been pretty strong in saying it's, quoting the Constitution, that you are supposed to present an actual budget with revenue numbers and spending numbers. Are you going to do that, or are you going to kick the can down the road again and let the legislature do it?
Well, let's see. So we have a constitutional requirement to have a balanced budget. We've had this constitutional requirement since at least 1970, maybe before. I've looked at the numbers. We certainly haven't had one for 30 years. Everybody says we got it, so the problem is not new. The problem was not created by our administration. I introduced a balanced budget my first 6 weeks in office. Some people didn't like it because it had some pension savings
Which are
in it.
unconstitutional. And you're not allowed to count on that when you present a budget according to
So-
the Constitution, because you didn't know that money was coming. It was $2.2 billion, right?
So we introduced a balanced budget, and the changes to the pension that I've agreed with President Colleton on, and even the Speaker's staff has agreed are constitutional, could have been done. And if we had to borrow a little bit to bridge from February of 15 through the court's ruling, that relative to the borrowing has gone on, it's infinitesimally small compared to what's gone on. And my budget was never even discussed or debated by the General Assembly. It was ignored, okay? So our process needs to change, and I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over, introducing a budget that just gets ignored and criticized. If we're going to either let me actually do it if I'm going to introduce it, or let's do it together, but no more, I'm speaking in the wind and nothing changes. That's a mistake. And in the end, the right answer is structural change so that we grow the economy faster than government spending. That's the critical thing.
Your legal counsel, I believe, sent a letter to Susanna Mendoza's legal counsel suggesting that she ignore a court ruling if it comes down, ordering her to stop paying state workers.
Yeah, so-
Is that a prudent thing to, your legal officer advising to ignore court decisions?
Yes, so this is a really big issue, and you mentioned Comptroller Mendoza as well. I'll say two things. We have a structure that's fundamentally broken. The General Assembly has passed a continuing appropriation for themselves, so they get paid no matter what, and they work part-time. And many would argue, I would probably be one of them, that they're not really doing their job because they won't pass a balanced budget. But they've made sure that they get paid no matter what. And even though our state employees are working every day, doing their jobs, fulfilling their obligations, there are those who argue, well, they shouldn't get paid. I think this is fundamentally wrong. It's fundamentally broken. It's unfair. Our state employees are working. They should get paid. This is not complicated. And somehow, the General Assembly says it's okay, we don't have money, we don't pass a balanced budget, but we in the General Assembly get paid no matter what. And state employees, they're working every day, doing their jobs, they're doing what they're hired to do. They shouldn't get paid. This is wrong. Comptroller Munger has fought tirelessly on these two issues. She fought to make sure legislators' pay didn't come ahead of human services, didn't come ahead of school children, and she said no budget, no pay. That's exactly right. You'll hear Comptroller Mendoza be wishy-washy or vague or silent on this topic. This is wrong. And likewise, Comptroller Mendoza now is saying, well, maybe even though everybody's, our hardworking state employees are working and doing their jobs, maybe because it's, somebody says so, we shouldn't pay them. She should be fighting, just like Comptroller Munger did, to make sure our state employees get paid. This dynamic is not their fault. They're doing their job. The legislature's not. Somebody might argue, I'm not, but you know what, I don't get paid, and I don't want to get paid, and I'm doing this as a volunteer to get our state strong and get our economy growing and make sure that we have balanced budgets with more jobs.
But the person who would say not to pay the state workers would be a judge, or maybe ultimately the Supreme Court. I mean, that's not just some man on the street saying that they shouldn't be paid.
But you've got to, as an elected official, fight for what you firmly believe is right. You got to work for what you believe is right. And it is not right to cut off state employee pay when they're working. It's just not right.
But even if there's a court order.
So, and this is an important point. So if the Attorney General is successful in her suit, my understanding is then the quarter to keep paying would go away. There is no reason that the comptroller couldn't continue to have state employees paid. It doesn't block the comptroller to pay. It just says she's not forced to pay. There's a difference, and I believe firmly, and Comptroller Munger believed firmly, that it's fair and appropriate that state employees are working, they should get paid. Legislators are not working, not doing their jobs, and they shouldn't get paid, or at least not paid first. They should be paid after human services, after state employees, after school children. I think that's right.
Should the legislature pass a continuing appropriation for human services then too, or higher education?
There are many things that get continuing appropriations.
Let me quote candidate Rauner, and you've heard this before, but you talk about how important it is for employees to keep working and be paid. We're also in the middle of AFSCME negotiations. They say you walked away from the table. You did get the State Labor Relations Board to say you're at impasse, because you said they did it. But you did say back in 2013 at a Lincoln Day dinner that you wanted to spend less, and if they won't do it, I apologize. We may have to go through rough times if we have to do what Ronald Reagan did with the air traffic controllers if we have to sort of do a do-over and shut things down for a little while, that's what we're going to do. So, did you believe that then? Do you believe it now, or have you changed, seeing what state employees actually do?
Okay, so let's talk about the situation with the AFSCME negotiations and the AFSCME contract. So we have negotiated contracts with 20 government unions, and they are either identical to or very similar to our proposal to AFSCME. We met with AFSCME 67 times. Sorry. It's okay. You need to take that?
No.
We met 67 times for more than a year. Their negotiators were very firm and very clear. The proposed changes that we wanted to make were not acceptable. There was no way they were ever going to be acceptable. And they wanted $3 billion more in pay over 4 years. And they were crystal clear and very consistent.
They deny that, by the way.
Got it. So we outlined, we followed the law, followed all the process, followed the procedures. We went to the Labor Board, and the Labor Board is bipartisan. The majority of the Labor Board are folks who were put on there not by me. They were put on there by my predecessors. Okay? They looked at the facts, and they made what, in my opinion, is very clear, correct ruling. We're at impasse. We're clearly at impasse. We were at impasse for a long time. Then there's a process from there. And we have said we should implement our contract together. And if the union decides they don't want to do that, they have their there's a legal process that's in place and should be followed. We believe our proposal is fair, it's reasonable, it's thoughtful, it's good for employees and good for taxpayers. A 40-hour work week is fair and reasonable. It shouldn't start at 37 and a half hours to get overtime. It is fair and reasonable for a person to get paid more based upon productivity or taxpayer savings, merit, not just seniority. It's very fair, it's very reasonable. It's very fair and reasonable that volunteers should be able to be used. People in Illinois are very generous people. They care about our communities. They would like to volunteer to clean up our state parks or to, to help out in our parks or our health facilities. This is a good thing, and we should be able to do that. It shouldn't be prohibited by a contract. And there are many other fair and reasonable things in our contract, and we got agreement with 20 other unions. So I hope that the decision is made on the other side of the table that a strike would not make sense. I don't think it would make sense. I don't think it's a good idea. And I hope together we'll work together to implement our contract.
If a strike did happen, do you anticipate state government shutting down, or will you be able to hire people in to keep some functions going? What would be the effect, I guess, on the everyday person?
Well, our goal would be to minimize the disruption and keep key services functioning, and I think we'll be prepared to minimize the disruption.
The things you mentioned, though, are not the major problems that AFSCME has with their proposal. A significant one of those is the health insurance costs, which they point out repeatedly that most of the unions you have settled with have their own arrangements for health insurance. And that in one case, I think it was the FOP, where you tried to get similar increases in insurance costs, an arbitrator ruled against you. So, that's a 40-hour work week, and that sort of thing is insignificant in the scheme of things that they're going to pay more for their insurance and go without a raise for 4 years.
Well, in the contract negotiations, the things I mentioned were very much hot topics and vehement disagreement about. And what wouldn't be fair to taxpayers, fair to school children, fair to state employees, is for this to just be dragged on and on. Delay is not fair to anybody. And that's what my perception is what's occurring. And every day of delay costs taxpayers well over $2 million per day, and close to $3 million, depending on which pieces get implemented in which time frame. And delay, encouragement to talk about, we had 67 discussions. I mean, there's a law and a process, we're following it, and we should just get our contract implemented. It's fair and appropriate.
How do you calculate that dollar figure per day?
By looking at the elements of our contract and making guesstimates about which pieces would get implemented on which date and how many people would be. You got to make assumptions, but I think it's pretty clearly between $2 and $3 million a day. And so, I'm sorry, Burns, just
That's
a quick,
fine.
and Doug, to your, just a little bit further on insurance. I think it'd be instructive if you would like to take a look. You might want to get your own numbers. We have some too, but look at what has gone on in healthcare over the last, pick your time frame, 10 years? I don't know, pick your, 5, 10, 20. What has happened to premiums, insurance costs, and coverage? Compare that to what your average working family, your average tax-paying family pays and how their insurance has gone, and how's that gone over time with our state employees. Now, I don't begrudge a great package for our state employees. It's a great package. They've been getting platinum coverage for less than silver pricing. That's just true. That's a fact. And all we've said is, let's be reasonable. Let's give you choices. If you want to stay in platinum, you might have to pay a little more to have platinum, but it's fair. Look at what taxpayers, what are working families, what's going on with them? Look, you'll find out premium costs for your average working family in Illinois have gone through the roof. State employees? No. Or if you want to keep your costs the same, you can, but you can't keep platinum coverage. You got to get more silver or a little less than silver because that's what you're paying for. These are not unreasonable things. This is fair, it's balanced, and it gives choices. And we'd like the employees to have choices. These are reasonable things.
I don't know if you said particularly if you think Ronald Reagan did the right thing firing all the air traffic controllers, and is that something that you still think is a reasonable model? And we've also got Representative Durkin the other day saying, better watch out if you cross Rauner. He's a tough guy, and your families may not come out so well if you go on strike.
Well, again, I hope there's no strike. That would be bad for everybody. Our proposal is reasonable, it's thoughtful. We've done it with 20 other unions. It's a balanced approach. I think our contract proposal is the right thing to do. We've been at impasse a long time. We shouldn't keep coming up with delay. That's what's been going on. There's been a lot of delay.
Attorney General's Madigan's motion asks for a 2/28 hard deadline if there isn't a budget in place in terms of stopping the pay to state workers. Do you feel that we can have a budget in place at least through fiscal 17?
Boy, I hope we get a balanced budget and structural changes, in the next few days. I mean, that would be great. I don't know. This is a challenging process. I'm concerned. I sincerely hope that the action by the Attorney General, the timing of the action by the Attorney General is not an attempt to disrupt what the Senate's working on. The Attorney General could have, and actually took some steps to stop state employee pay going back over a year. And I've warned about that and said it would be the wrong thing to do going back almost 18 months. Why now? Why in this circumstance? I sincerely hope this does not disrupt the good faith negotiations going on in the Senate.
Have you been in communication with the Senate President and leader, about the bargain?
Very little. I talked to them, and I talked to many members of the General Assembly in all caucuses, but I have not really inserted myself, and our administration has not inserted itself in the negotiation.
I appreciate what you've done around criminal justice reform, especially signing all of those clemency or kind of removing the backlog. On
Yeah,
clemencies.
yeah.
That's
Well, thank you, I appreciate it. was a lot of work to get down that backlog. It's unfair to people to be left in limbo like we were leaving them in limbo.
So the commission, though, that made some recommendations relative to reform,
Mhm.
I heard the leader of that group, and he said, well, there were some things around weapons and other kind of things that we just decided that wasn't our job, and we really needed to let the General Assembly take that. I just think if there's a recommendation that a commission can make, I really wish they'd gone ahead and made it so that they could act on that one way or the other. Any thoughts about that?
Well, the good news is, I don't think criminal justice reform is something that you do once and you're done. I mean,
Right.
we should have an ongoing process to make our criminal justice system truly fair and always striving to increase the safety for the people of Illinois, but also be compassionate and have a heart for people who make a mistake and commit an offense and help them be productive citizens. And there's always going to be work to do on it, and I will never give up on that. And I think whether we reconstitute the commission or encourage them to extend, I mean, this is a process. It's not over.
Okay. Good. I think the other thing, and this is kind of more general question, but, so given all of your experience in business over the years, and then you come into state government 2 years ago and ran a couple of years before that. But, so what from your business experience have you found works in state government, and what doesn't work?
Well, what works is talented people forming teams and trying to drive results. We've got fantastic people in our government, and I love our hardworking state employees. Many have been there for 20, 30, 35 years. I walked into my first 6 months in office. I visited most of the departments. I've been in most of them now, not every one yet, but I'll get there. And many of the people said, wow, I've worked for state government for 27 years. I've never seen a governor. Thanks for coming over. I'm like, I work for you, and we all have the privilege of working for the people of Illinois. You think you work for me, you don't work for me. We work for the people. And the people are awesome, and I brought in a lot of good people from around the state who've never been in government to help run, because fresh perspectives, business peoples, educators, people from various walks of life in Illinois. But I also brought in people from out of state
Right.
who've been in government, because I thought we needed a little fresh infusion of cultural innovation and some shift, because we were a little bit, I think, encrusted in how we do things. And so, head of corrections from Iowa, and head of DCFS from Florida, big Democrat, by the way, and my head of lottery, DCFS, and many's are Democrats. I'm a high talent, high integrity, get results person, management leadership is not partisan. So, and COO from Georgia, and legal team from Indiana, and, I go down the list. Every one of them, no exceptions, called me the first couple of weeks and said, wow, Governor, you didn't say it was this bad. And I said, yes, I did. Yes, I did. You may not have been listening, but I said it was really bad. And then every one of them, no exception, said, wow, this is so wrong. My department is set up for political purposes or for purposes that benefit the system here, not to provide services on real value. I said, exactly why you're here. That's exactly why I brought you. Because Indiana doesn't do it this way. Georgia doesn't do it this way, the way we're doing it. We need you to change. Now, maybe Indiana's not perfect, but we need some new ideas and some new ways of thinking. And so we're doing that. And we're modernizing our IT systems. There's a lot of departments we don't even have computers.
Right.
And productivity's low. Turnaround time is very slow, et cetera. And we've brought in a new system of innovation and accountability, and frankly, a culture shift. We changed the ethics around leaving the administration and go be a lobbyist, or the revolving door and the gift ban. But just a mindset of, we're public servants. We work for the people of Illinois first, not a political party, not because you're somebody's sister-in-law, not because, and people appreciate it. Good people appreciate good leadership, and most people are there for the right reasons, and they want to be appreciated because they do the right thing.
Right.
And it hurts morale when bad bad decision-making or bad processes are left in place, or people who don't behave properly are rewarded or protected. We've had a lot of protecting. Now, we got the IDOT folks out who should have been out a long time ago. We're working with Shackman to get some other folks out. We have a problem, and a big ongoing problem, people who were brought in for political purposes over the years get into the union and then get protected. You can't do anything about it, and so it's a challenge. But we got a big cultural shift going on, and it's exciting.
So on the other hand, though, what have you brought from business that you just kind of had to butt your head up against that doesn't?
Well, from business, it's all about team building and talent and problem solving together, and laying out a plan and implement a plan, and we're doing that in every regard, in every department. Obviously, political process and governing is a consensus building, bring people along process that's different than most businesses. I mean, all businesses have some amount of that. This has it to a much greater degree. And change comes much more slowly. And that's just true. You got to be persistent. I am extremely persistent. I'm probably not as patient as I probably know in a perfect world, but that's okay. Persistence is the key. And we always try to stay the course and do good things. And we're making good progress, and we'll get there.
So with Missouri approved right to work, is that something that you're going to resume a push for? And why or why not?
Well, I outlined 44 points, and certainly not forcing unionization was one of the things I said we should consider. But I've taken that off the table, and I've not pushed it since, and, I'm not pushing that.
Even without a budget, you have been able to bring into your administration 28 people plus Leslie Munger from Leslie Munger's shop after she got beat in November.
Yeah.
How much vetting was done for those people, or did you just assume that they're all great because they worked for Republican and controller? Because it looks like the kind of thing you're accusing the Democrats of doing. Well, they knew somebody's brother.
Well, so I haven't met them all personally, but I've met a lot of them, and I've worked with some of them personally. I mean, Phil Rodriguez is awesome, and Brad Hahn is awesome, and Leslie Munger is fantastic. She's and she could make triple, quadruple the money that she's making inside government, and she knows budgeting and numbers. She's a great communicator, with total integrity, and so bringing them over was outstanding from my perspective. And we've had a number of people who've left for various reasons. And frankly, when I came in, I asked people, most people that I brought in had to take big salary cuts. I took a fairly large one myself. And they can't stay for, mostly I said a 2-year commitment. Can you make a 2-year? You can't do a 6-month or a year. That's not enough. A 2-year. So there's a lot of people made a 2-year commitment, and some of those folks have been, going back to the real world or to other things. And there's a natural attrition or a natural turnover, and this is part of it. We've got some fresh blood. Many of the folks we brought over had worked for Judy Bartopinka, so they know the government, but they've also got some outside the government experience. But they know the financials and the budget of the organization and of the administration. And they really add a lot of value, and they brought some new thinking to the team that we already had there. So so far the move has been great. It's very productive.
So you are 2 years in, midterm. What midterm grade would you give yourself?
Oh, I don't know. I think on the things that our administration could control and do, and it's been fantastic. I'm very proud of the team. Record education funding, criminal justice reform, IT reform, ethics reform, cultural change inside government. We've done a lot of terrific things, but many things are incomplete. It's a work in process, and structural change doesn't come easily or quickly. And I guess I could argue in democracy it shouldn't come too quickly. I mean, it takes some work. I'm frustrated by things like, why couldn't the General Assembly pass a fair foundation for us so we could fix up our fairground? I mean, really? Come on. Why couldn't we pass a bill so we could go forward with a managed lane for I-55 so our commuters could have a better commute and we could grow our economy faster and not cost taxpayers any money? huge bipartisan support. I proposed that with a leading Senate Democrat together. Why couldn't we, I mean, why can't we sell the Thompson Center? The city of Chicago is desperate they would love it because we could generate more than $40 million in taxes per year for the city that's not there now, and they need the money. The school children of Chicago could use the money. And we could give the land away, which I would never do. It belongs to all of us, and we should get top dollar, and we'll get top dollar for it. But we could give it away and save $8 million a year, because it's just, we're heating and cooling space, very inefficient, noisy, a little smelly, and you know, why couldn't, and huge bipartisan support for this. Why can't we pass this bill? There's a, I don't know, I can't explain it, but we're not doing common sense things that are good for the people of Illinois, not enough. And so my grade is frustrated but optimistic.
Does it, and I know I've asked you this before, but, you know, you just gave your own campaign $50 million. You and a couple of friends of yours tried to beat Sam McCann for like $5 million. The campaign has gone on continuously since you've been here, and it's mostly from your side, with Madigan getting attacked. Lisa Madigan was just added to, you know, Boss Madigan website today, and Tim Schneider was on the phone saying how terrible she is because she doesn't want state employees. So perhaps if you want the legislature to do things, wouldn't it be smarter not to be campaigning all the time and actually trying to work with those people without that kind of, I know you talk about arrows and everybody's got to take them, but as a business person, doesn't it make more sense not to be insulting the people you're trying to make a deal with constantly?
Well.
And you've called Madigan corrupt on the lawn of the mansion a year ago.
So I'll say a couple things. I'm very focused on the governing process and getting structural change to grow our economy faster than government spending. That's my focus. I am not involved in the messaging on the political side. That's
You
not
fund
what I
it.
do. Well, I do fund. I believe in a two-party democracy. I believe that democracy doesn't work on a one-party basis. We have been a one-party state for a long time. It almost bankrupted us. And yes, I support the Republican Party with financial resources. And I hope everybody who believes in a two-party system would do likewise. But that doesn't mean I'm telling them what to say or do or run or whatever. I don't do that. And if you look, finally, we have, for the first time ever, leaders on the other side of the aisle who are working on major structural changes and acknowledging that we need tax reform to grow jobs, and that term limits are important, and that property tax relief is important. These are great things, and we should work together to try to bring them to conclusion.
As long as we're doing a Springfield thing, we have our own little vista out here, not right here, but just a few blocks away, the mansion, and then the YWCA just came down,
Yeah.
and you haven't commented publicly about what you're doing, but your people have written, like, we'd like a park there. What are you pushing for downtown Springfield in the Y block, and are you working with the city on that?
Well, so let's take a step back. I love Springfield. It's a great town. I love living here. It's great people, great quality of life. I love the shop owners. I go in every shop I can. I love the local farmers. I go bird hunting with them whenever I can. I love riding with the local police officers and the veterans. This is awesome. I love Springfield. And I go to basketball games, and I go to, I skate at the ice rink up there. People make fun of me, but I used to play hockey 50 years ago. But this is great. I love Springfield. I am a strong believer in tourism as an economic engine. And Springfield does okay on tourism. We should be kicking tails on tourism. And so I would like to come up, and there are a lot of ideas we're working on. It would be inappropriate for me to comment today because it's too early, but there's some ideas that I think are very exciting that we could, again, not taxpayer funded, but ideas to grow our tourism for Springfield and for Central Illinois. We have so much to offer, so much to promote about what's great here and what's great in Illinois. And obviously, we have the bicentennial coming up. That's a big opportunity. But beyond that, it's not a 1 or 2 year thing. This is a long-term, wonderful thing. I want to be a big promoter of tourism and growth for Springfield. Obviously, my wife and I are working to make the mansion nice again. I'm going to be, it's as a lot of construction projects, it gets delayed. It's been delayed. But we're going to get there, and I think we've raised $13.5 million of the $15 million we need, so we're going to get there very shortly. I love that mansion. That's a beautiful place, and it's such a source of pride. For me, it's an honor to be there. I mean, to me, I'm here the significant majority of my time. I travel around the state, and I do go up to the Chicago area a fair bit, but I'm here most of my time. Diana's not here most of her time because she's in 27 states and needs O'Hare Airport, so she's here. Now, our kids are grown and gone, so it's not a big issue. It's, me and the dog get a little lonely, but the dog likes her better than me, but what are you gonna do? But there is a parking lot across from the mansion. It's been an eyesore and a lost opportunity for a long time. There've been a lot of ideas about what to do with that. I've heard about them. I personally have my views. Others have their views. I think there's a lot of ideas on the table. But that could be, in my opinion, an outstanding tourism driver.
Well, are you talking about open space, like a park, as some of the emails from your office have indicated, or from somebody? Or are you talking about businesses and apartments, or a museum, or what?
Well, there are a lot of ideas on the table. I think it wouldn't be right for me to publicly say yet. I don't want to talk about that on the record.
Okay, well, it is city property, so are you going to buy it, or are you just going to tell them what you want at some point? Or, I mean, it's not yours to do, so why not talk about it?
You know, I'm a big believer in cooperation and bipartisanship and every level of government working together.
Okay.
Well, considering the city is constantly complaining about state properties not being on property tax rolls and bills introduced to have the state pay impact fees on the city, is leaving that as open space the best use for the property?
In my opinion, one of the greatest things we can do for Springfield is really drive major tourism. You get a lot of tax revenue and jobs, restaurant jobs, transportation jobs, a lot of jobs and a lot of business growth around tourism. We could really get our economy booming here with tourism.
So you want
Having
to,
lived here for 2 years, where is the city falling short on tourism? Because you said we're doing okay, but we should be.
Well, again, I think we can create events and venues and things to see that aren't here yet that wouldn't cost that much to get here.
Can I get a group of people and we come talk to you about some of that stuff?
You know,
Because that block, I mean, you know, you talk economic development too, and so, to me, that is a part of, I mean, it's a huge area. I think it could probably be a mixed use. It could do both things too, but, and I see your point with tourism, but economic development's a huge part of what I think Springfield needs too, so.
Sure, I strongly agree.
Yeah.
so as the top Republican in the state, other than Tim Schneider, depending on which hat you're wearing, we have a new president. How, in general, is President Trump doing? And I know you expressed some concern about the refugee ban, or whatever it was, for a while, and you don't want Syrian refugees to come to Illinois. How is President Trump doing, and how are you finding, and, you know, the state's relationship with the federal government under the new administration, and the ban, if you want to talk about that?
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. So I did publicly take a position that many governors did. I called for a pause, not a long-term ban, but a pause on Syrian refugee resettlement because ISIS had made a public statement saying they were working to insert terrorists inside the refugee flow out of Syria. I don't think it's unreasonable to say, okay, let's just take a little breath here.
And that was before the president's order, correct?
Oh, longer, this was,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
while, this is before the election.
Yeah.
And I said, we have a fantastic anti-terrorism center here and professionals here. I wanted to get them more closely working with the federal agencies involved and to coordinate the Syrian issue. And I just wanted our administration to understand in a little more detail the vetting process that was occurring. Because I have concern, my number one priority is to keep the people of Illinois safe. That was it. We were ignored on that. We didn't succeed in getting a pause. We're pushing, advocating as strong as we can for really thorough vetting. Beyond that, I think we don't want to be rash, we don't want to be overly broad. I am against using a religion as a basis for, restricting immigration or visas or anything like that.
Yeah, the president
So-
said he didn't do that.
So.
Do you think he did?
So I personally don't know the president, really. I called him to congratulate him after the election and said, look forward to working together to do good things for the people of America and the people of Illinois, and anything I could do to help, I would try to do. I look forward to a cordial working relationship between our administration and the federal administration. That's in the people's the interest of Illinois, to have a good working relationship. Mike Pence and I have worked together for years. We know each other well. He's helped me, I've helped him. We don't agree on everything, but I don't agree with everybody. No two people agree on everything. I don't agree with myself some mornings. I mean, it's, it's kind of like, you got to kind of find common ground and work together. Nick Ayers, who ran Pence's campaign, is a good friend of mine. He ran my campaign. He's the former head of the RGA, Republican Governors Association, very talented guy. He's very involved in the administration and transition, so we have a great connection there, and that with Mike Pence. Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina, is a close friend of mine. She's awesome. She is awesome. She's helped me. I've helped her. I'm excited that she's going to the UN. I think she'll do a great job. Our working relationship with the UN needs to change, and but again, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. I got to focus here, but we have a very good, and she's going to be a leading voice within the administration on security issues, which is great. So we have a good partnership, working relationship there. John Lerner, he helped run my campaign. I recruited him to do strategy and polling. Brilliant man. Also ran Nikki Haley's campaign. They're very close. Orthodox Jew from Maryland, who's a very big believer that the UN structure needs to change. And so he and Nikki are going together to work on the UN issues, which I think is awesome. I think it's a great step in the right direction. So I have good working relationships with a number of people, and then Betsy DeVos. I don't know whether she's going to be confirmed. I probably know about as much as you guys do. I'm a big education choice person. I've known Betsy for years. She's very passionate and very intelligent and very thoughtful, and I think she would be a good education secretary. I look forward to working with her or whoever becomes head of education. My two passions are economic growth and jobs and outstanding public education. That's why I ran. That's what I've spent my prior 35 years as a private citizen, growing jobs as a venture capitalist, growing businesses, and trying to reform and improve education through charter schools and scholarships and teacher training. And this is my two passions: jobs and schools.
If I could ask about higher education is one of the things where you say you're a great advocate of that also. Your first budget, I think, had a 30% cut to it. Ultimately, they've gotten about a 70% cut since you've been governor from what they used to get. Many people say, including President Cullerton today, that high school counselors are telling their kids go out of state because we don't know if Eastern or Western or Northern are going to be around, because there's no state funding coming their way that's guaranteed right now. So I know you say you're an advocate for higher education, but isn't the impasse itself having rather devastating long-term results, because kids are leaving the state and then they're going to set up roots in other states where they go to college?
Well, let's talk about higher ed. The issues that you raised are exactly why I'm so frustrated and so impatient to get a balanced budget with structural change. We should have had this done more than a year and a half ago. There's consequences to not having a balanced budget and to not having structural change. So we've got to do this. I am a big believer in having the best schools at all levels and cradle to career education, not just K to 12, but early childhood education, K to 12, community colleges, vocational training programs, apprenticeships, great university system. I am personally committed to getting more money into our university system. I want to see that happen as part of a balanced budget with structural change.
Whenever you say structural change, that's what has tripped up. I mean, it just hasn't happened in 2 years.
But yes, that's an accurate statement. So, or at least some of it hasn't. One of the big challenges in our university system, we have many, is the cost structure of our university system. The overhead, the bureaucracy, the layers of administration, the pensions, the work rules, the the layers, the offices, the cost structure is not competitive and not attractive. And there's also a lot of redundancy, a lot of overlap within our state university system, and not very effective cost structure for taxpayers. And so, I'm sorry, just to finish the point, this is a really important issue. So, and the good news is, all the university heads that we're working with have acknowledged that they agree with that statement. They're trying to change. I look forward to working with them to change. And Burns, the issue you raised of people going out of state, this isn't the last 2 years. This has been going on a long time. We have a lot of people go out of state for university because our in-state tuition for years has been higher than a lot of states' out-of-state tuition. This is not a last 2 year thing. This has been true for a while. I would like to reform and change our university structure for the state system, so there's not as much overlap, there's not as much redundancy, and also there's more efficiency. The money should be in the classroom with the students and the teachers, and not so much in the layers of overhead. So that's what we're working to do.
Long-term, this isn't something that, would be done overnight, but it almost sounds like you're saying we have too many higher ed institutions.
No, I'm not necessarily saying that. I would say, do you need, I don't even want to quote today. It would be, I'll just cause somebody's hair to go on fire, and I'm not, I don't want to, do we need every school in the state to offer a certain thing? Should some offer some and some others not offer it? We have overlap that maybe we could be more effective with.
So more like a mission refocusing process?
Yeah, a more, areas of focus and discipline and excellence, areas of excellence and focus.
You said during the campaign, I think it was right here, about when I asked about professor tenure in college, you said nobody should be guaranteed a job. Do you still believe that? Is that a goal also, to do away with tenure in college? And wouldn't that be a impediment to recruiting faculty to Illinois, or to stay in Illinois?
I'm not a big fan of tenure, but I also not pushing that issue. And that's not, we've got a lot of other things I'm working on. That's not something I'm trying to change.
We have time for one more.
Yes, I could say, I get a lot of letters to the editor from local people who, they're frustrated by state government, what it means, they're not spending money. What message would you have to our readers who are frustrated with what lack of action in the State House has meant for their communities here in Springfield?
Well, I encourage everybody in the state to get involved. This is an important time in our state's history, and get involved through social media and Facebook and all the various ways of communicating. Get involved by being in contact with our office and giving us your thoughts and recommendations on policies or issues. Get in touch with your legislator, your senator, and your representative, and let them know what you think and what you recommend, and get involved with your group, your school, your church, your organization, and get involved. It's great. This is how democracy works, and we need our system to change. I don't think there's anybody in the state who thinks that everything's fine and has been fine for years, and we should just keep doing the same thing. I can't find anybody. Nobody tells me that. And I have many people every day who come to me and say, Governor, you're on the right track. Stay strong. We need to fix the system. And a lot of times they say that I'm a Democrat. I don't normally support Republicans, but we know that you're trying to do the right thing. And that's very gratifying. And we just got to come together. But your readers, or your followers, I encourage them. This is home. This is home. I love home. I love our home. And we gotta work together to make our home better for our kids and our grandkids. That's what this is about. So we're all working for a better life for our kids and our grandkids. Get involved.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.